years ago when Joellen was getting her PhD. She was in Prague, Czechoslovakia, and ran into a young man by the name of Valdemir Dvorak, who was, was he OBGYN?
He was an OBGYN.
He was OBGYN, and everybody was practicing under communism at that time. And she suggested that he come over to the United States. So he came over at the old Sioux Valley, spent 3 months here with John Paulson, and 6 weeks he spent in our office.
Okay.
And I gave him, when he left, I gave him an old biopsy forceps for the cervix. And he said, this will improve my practice 50%. Because he had no instruments to work with.
Oh, okay.
Oh my.
And Courtney Anderson from Canton retired. And he gave me 2 full examining rooms full of everything. Tables, instruments, and all that kind of thing. And I got hold of the Schwann Foundation. And the fellow, he was from Wisconsin, if I remember right. And he said, don't ship it over, airmail it, and I will take it. And he took it over and gave it to Valdemir, and he set up his practice, and I gave him my old microscope and a couple other instruments. And I think his ultrasound was going to cost him $200,000. And here's a guy that had no money and was just starting. He now has 14 physicians working for him. Is the only, at that time, was the only private practice OBGYN in the country. And
That's what he came for. He wanted to learn how to be an independent OBGYN practitioner because he was under communistic rule.
And
so I told him he had to meet this man, and he taught him little things like charting, billing, scheduling. I mean, he started
the business of medicine, basically.
He went back. He was the very first, and it transformed Czechoslovakia's healthcare industry, not just OB. It was the beginning of independent practice.
so just one little talk, and he comes back. He's good friends with the Walt Bones family and Minnie Bones, and he has been back here to see them at least twice that I know of. And Ruby and I were at a cruise out of Athens, and so we went up and spent a week in Czechoslovakia, and he took us around and met his folks. I mean, it's a good story of a lot of people touching somebody else that other than just the United States.
Telemedicine is in its infancy right now, and I do believe that it is going to really be the way of rural medicine. Something that happened that was just incredible. My partner got called emergently because a woman had been in an awful car accident, and there was nobody there to do a C-section, and it was obvious that she was not going to make it. And so they called my partner, and he, through a Skype session, talked to the family doctor and how to do a perimortem C-section.
Wow.
Unfortunately, the baby did not make it, so that's a sad story. But it's just showing you how he could look at her, she could look at him, he could tell her what to do. I mean, these are things that were unheard of.
Well, there's a new doc in town, and just turning the world on it. And we'd work weekends to make money for our tuition. And so I worked with John Canfield, your major. So I got to know all about him and his work through the staff that he worked with, because nursing is like a little family. It talks a lot. So we did that, and then I kept working at Sioux Valley, and I became his patient because Dennis and I had several miscarriages. So Dr. Mutch helped us to have our first children. He delivered our twins at Sioux Valley Hospital, and then I left. And when I came back as chief nursing officer, Dr. Mutch had started this amazing practice because he always surrounded himself with very intelligent people. He looked for things that he didn't have and kept adding them because he's a very gracious, developmental, generous person. So when I was in Czechoslovakia, and this young man is saying, I want to become independent, of course, the first thing that came to mind was Dr. Mutch. So we brought him back, and during that 3 months he was here, we did all sorts of things with Vladimir and helped him get the best of Dr. Mutch and the best of the health system. We made him be a patient and ride around in a wheelchair. I mean, he got to really see a system and understand it very well. So then fast forward, I go away and I come back years later. Finally, the Women's Center that we had tried to start years before. How many years did you work?
1982, we had our first meeting.
Yes, we did. That was shortly before I left Sanford, Sioux Valley. He never gave up on this dream of wanting to have things better for women. And it never was just about babies. It was about health, but it was also about respect. I think when I think of the nursing staff and how we started the first neonatal intensive care nursery, all the other things that go around this whole business of obstetrics and everything, his commitment to his respect for life in all of its forms was just profound.